Today we're going to make some binding. Now binding is my least favorite thing in the world to do. To get started, you need your binding strips. These were cut at 2.5 inches by width of fabric. You can cut them narrower if you want them. A lot of people like 2.25 inches, but I like 2.5. For me, I have to have a cup of coffee. You're going to need a pencil to mark, a ruler, and some pins. So just to make your binding, you're going to start by taking 2 of your binding strips, and this first one you're going to lay right sides up facing you. You're going to take the second one and lay it right sides down, and you're going to form this little box here. What I like to do at this point is actually put a pin here and a pin here. You're going to draw a diagonal line from corner here to corner here. Just like that. You want your diagonal to come this way. If it goes this way, your binding's not going to work quite right. I know that. So we're going to sew directly on this line. So directly on the line, no back stitching, nothing like that. Sewing, sewing, sewing. So there you go. I've sewn directly on this line. I'm going to remove my pins, and before I cut this off, I'm going to check this to make sure that it is going the right way. So then at this point, you simply trim this to about 1/4 inch. I just use scissors for this. If you want to use your rotary cutter and be exact, you can. So there I have 2 of my binding sections sewn together. And then I just continue making sure I have the right side down, the right side up. And now my next piece of binding will be right side down. I'm going to put my 2 little pins in it. And I like the pins just to hold it. I also like to draw the diagonal line. If you can sew a really straight line, maybe you can get away without drawing this line. I can't. I cannot sew a straight line from here to here without it being all wonky. I just can't do it. So I always draw the line. So I'm going to sew this one down. I'm going to sew all of my binding strips together, and then I'll show you how I press them. I'm still sewing my binding strips together, but I did want to point something out to you. If you notice, when I lay these right sides together and draw this diagonal line, I have all this extra space here and all this extra space here. I normally don't cut the selvage off of my strips, so that just allows for the selvage. And that's why I do that. Plus, it's a little easier to line up and to trim by leaving just a little bit of an overhang on both sides. Do you remember in the beginning of the video when I said you always wanted to draw your diagonal line this way and not this way? And here's the reason why. Don't do it this way, because when you sew on this line and you flip that back, you see, you have this mess. It doesn't work. So that's just to show you what not to do. Don't do this, always go this way. Here we are at the ironing board. And the first thing I do is I press all of my strips. They're all sewn together. And I press my seams just to one side. I don't use steam in my iron. The main reason being where we live, we have very hard water. And after a while, it just ruins the iron. So I just always squirt it with water. Okay, so my strips has all been pressed. And I've got miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of binding. So then all you do is you just fold your strip in half, making sure you're folding it so the right side's on the outside and the seam's on the inside. And you just press this in half. And just continue on until you're done. Now, I know people are particular about the way they press. I may get some comments. You know, it's recommended that you just go up and down and not do this movement here. Sorry, guys, that's the way I press. I wiggle it. And so anyway, we're just going to press the whole thing. And that is how you make the binding. Now, down in the links, in the description, I'll put a link to a document that you can get that'll tell you how to calculate how many strips of fabric you need for your binding. That's real handy. People ask me all the time, well, how much do I need for binding? Well, I'm going to put a little calculator document down below in the link or in the description for this. You'll just click on it and you'll be able to print it off. Now, if you like this video, we do hope that you'll subscribe to our channel. I hope you like the video. This will be a 3-part series. This being part 1, how to make your binding. Part 2 will be how to sew it onto the quilt, which again, I don't like doing, but we're going to do it. And then part 3 will be how to connect the ends. So stay tuned for more. Bye.